Our next speaker is Enzo Badalotti. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Mediacontech, which, as Elke explained this morning, is the new name of a company which took part in the Cetra project with the old name of Eufon, so he's also involved with the Cetra project. Enzo has also been a professor at our university for 2 or 3 years, so he has also experience of interaction with the students. Please.
Okay. First of all, let me thank you all, the organization, for the opportunity that's been given to me to speak to you about my perspective about complexity and management. Complexity is an intellectual interest on one side, and something that for sure has been useful in my experience has been mainly as a manager in, I would say for a long time, something like 10 or 15 years in large organization, typically in information technology, later on telecommunication. There were some opportunity to see at that time an international perspective of the business and the speed of changes that is bringing information technology to telecommunication, and my last experience in a much smaller company is in a media sector. It's by chance, but for sure is a kind of story where I can tell you part of what I've been learning from the change of the market, from how some business has been changing from IT from information technology to telecommunication to media, and many times it's not been possible during that period to understand not only the changes that were overcoming. This is something that happened to us in a lot of different situations, but also the logical categories you are applying to your existing management tools were no more useful in an environment that was not only changes in terms of speed, of technology, of globalization, in terms of interconnection that probably is the other side of globalization of our business. It was really changing in a much deeper way, because there were many times changes in the attribution of functionality of some of the products. There were changes in the market environment, and it was not possible to compare the same company 5 years later with 5 years before. 1 or 2 things just to give you an example. When I've been starting to study a bit more, a better way to understand the business development and the story of information technology during 80s and information technology and telecommunication during 90s, basically I could realize that in all my experience, but the same for a lot of other friends of mine, manager in different company or environment, if you try to compare any kind of business plan, maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, sometimes 10 years business plan of an information technology company done within 80s or 90s, and then you try to check it if it is useful, valuable, meaningful, not 10 years later, not 5 years later, but 2, 3 years later, you look at it and simply you are thinking that you are losing and wasting a lot of time, simply because it's nothing of what you have been planning there has been happening. What has been happening has been realized doing things completely different from what you have in mind at that time. And maybe, that is still the last level that I want to address, you can't really tell if the company is the same or not. Okay, you can check if the name is the same, but for example, I've been changing the name of my company I would say that the company is the same, but the name has been changing. It's changing probably because it's been changing the business, because we want to change communication. But also when you have the same name, the same entity, it's very difficult to see and to realize if it is the same object, the same agent, the same player in the marketplace. Very difficult to say. And it's not one case among many others. The large majority of the cases, I would say 90% of this, in this kind of sector, you realize is not so clear what is the new things that you are handling. Just an example. One of the experience was in Olivetti, and a producer of IT technology, one of the main producer of PC at the beginning, and then information system with open architecture, networking, and moving at a certain time to telecommunication. If you look at that time, at the beginning, the middle of 80s, in one of that business plan, Olivetti was profiling the list of its main competitors. The first one was IBM. It's a huge comparison. The dimensions were really different. After 3 years, 4 years, in the new presentation of a business plan, IBM was no more included in the list of competitors, simply because the real competitor was Taiwanese. IBM were no more focusing on computer, were already building up large system and large software. And simply, you were not able to understand who are your competitors 4 years later. Take care that, from a complexity perspective, for example, sometimes we've been using some category like different level of organization, different relation between level, tangled hierarchies. But there is also the level of what sometimes we've been utilizing also in other projects like ISCOM projects that are relating to what is not so clear, but what we call multitemporality. Multitemporality for me is something where you have different processes that are running on the same time, whose logic, information base and dynamics is rooted in a different timing and information environment. Let me say, you can find that the launch of a product has been starting 4 years ago in a certain environment. The technical time to realize it has been determined by technological requirement, by the ability of the company to realize the product, but maybe in the same time you are interrelated and connected to many other processes of technologies, of people, of relation that could be much quicker in reaction, but could be created also a lot of different requirement in your ability to get the final result. Just to tell the story of what happened in 4 years later. So after the PC was out of the world, of the strategic perspective, let me say, the company discovered that it was very interested in moving in telecommunication. Olivetti in Italy has been then running the startup of Omnitel, that was the first player as a new player in mobile telecommunication. And at that time, all the supplier of technology for telecommunication were comparing what were the best choice in terms of technology. They were comparing Ericsson, Nokia and Motorola, the three main players worldwide. The starting of the mobile business was requiring huge investment, something like 3 billion liras at the time in the first 2 years, and probably a return within 8-10 years. What's happening is that there's been done a choice. In Italy, I was part of that project because it was in Omnitel at that time. We've been choosing Nokia, probably for our evaluation at that time, the best player, And what happened, I'm just running 5 years later, that in the new business plan, when you had to try to make the choice for the best supplier for technology, that was supposed to be surviving at least for 10 years, because the return on investment was 10 years, okay, in the list of the best player and supplier for this kind of technology, Motorola was out of the game, Ericsson was the lower, Nokia not very well positioned, and they were saying, okay, if you want to look at the past, you can choose one of these. If you wanted to look at the present, not at the future, the only choice is Cisco. Cisco was just entering in the internet market, just completely changing the logic of switching, providing new services, entering as the new player was able to give you the possibility of a telecommunication structure that could be completely interconnected in a mobile solution and in the fixed line solution. Within 12 years, we have not been changing the product, we have not been changing the sales structure, we have not been changing the projection of the market. We have been changing all the environment of what were our competitor, the market environment, the part of the value chain we were supporting, and any meaning for traditional strategic business plan was simply something completely unusual. I've been bringing this experience, but I could add that the last one, in a much smaller company that is in the media sector, probably is living the same kind of changes, because when I entered the market, the company was considered a small player, but the main independent player in Italy in services for communication and broadcaster. Today, I'm starting to see, not today, but in the last 2 years, that is no more clear what is a broadcaster. Are we sure that we have still a television in the future, but internet television will be substituting a broadcaster? Probably. The advertising frame is probably changing so fastly and moving from broadcaster to something else. Then if you look at what was broadcaster in the past, this could be also something that is not perceived if you are not in the market. Normally you think that a broadcaster like Rai, Mediaset in Italy is the full player to provide you programs and the television. What really is happening is that they are providing and taking care more and more only of the acquisition of contents, and they are outsourcing and not managing all the physical, technological platform and technology that bring you on your television the possibility to see the program. The meaning of broadcaster today is completely different from 5 years ago, and it's still not comparable with a broadcaster 10 years ago. This was not just to shock you about the level of uncertainty or what is the huge challenge for manager. I was arguing before that probably I feel much more difficult to be a good father for my young children than to try to play the best of the game as a manager. I'm not saying that the second one is easy, but let me say as a manager you can have some tools or frame or something that can help you. I want to shift to the second part. So if the first was the complexity in management environment, this was just a snapshot of what I think is the more interesting and challenging, but interesting also for the use of the tools of complexity, was related to this first part, was related to the fact, and I go back to some category that we have been shared with Roberto and other working on this project. The first one is really matching with the context of ontological uncertainty. So the list of the first cases are cases where it's not clear what is the rules of the player, and they are changing within times. They are changing on the basis of their action and of action of the environment, where they have a co-evolution, they have adaptation. But when it really becomes that you are changing the role in the marketplace, it's something more than an adaptation. It's something where you have to be able to understand or to move in a different way, or the company or the market environment. This is also the reason why I think the simulation is useful for sure, specifically I think to networks and agent-based modeling, I think. At the same time, the difficulties is that for the starting point in an agent-based modeling or network, then you can have evolution, is at least to be able to define well enough or the standard agent or the different agent. In this case, it's exactly this that is changing. It's changing the model. It's changing the model and the relation between the systems. So if you look at large economic system, you can have some situation like large-scale complexity and effects that can be better managed and simulated. In the other, it's very difficult to reduce complexity, but I think that simulation and agent-based modeling could be one of the ways to approach it. The second step is, okay, and what is the reason why I think complexity is useful, or more than useful, is necessary to try to face the situation of uncertainty or complexity that you have in social economic environment. First of all is that the fact is that with the approach of complexity you can find some logical categories that, at least to me, has been useful in giving an explanation or why traditional approach is not working. At least some traditional category has been explained in me because it is clear that it is not working. It is clear what is not going on. That maybe are not still providing completely, or providing only in part, tools that are well developed enough to be able to or to solve or to face the situation. But for sure, bringing different categories are bringing to you alternative approach to the problem and give you the possibility to investigate complexity. I just underline a small difference in the attribution of some meaning we have been utilizing. Personally, but it's absolutely a subject point of view, I prefer to utilize the word not of tools for complexity, but of browser for complexity. It's more a browser because you are finding a different way of giving sense to an organization, to a system, where it's not clear what are the role of the pieces, what are the perimeter, what are the role of the different blocks. The second one is that management is not relating to, or in my understanding, is not successful in this environment if it is approached in terms of control. You can't control it, or better, you can have feedback on information, on relevant information. You can try to introduce information in the system to get any change or any reaction. But what is much more interesting in my approach is that some logical categories are bringing you a different way of looking of organization and at companies or a social organization. Let me give you an example. One of the many questions. One of the questions about management and economics. There is already a problem that there is no clear relation between management literature, let me say, and economics. Management, it could be considered a meso level and then there is a micro level of individual behavior, and then there is the macro level of economic system. It's not clear how you can connect management with economics. It could be part of the integrated theory, but it's not on the table really in integrated theory. If you focus on management, some of the questions, they are typical when you talk about organization. For example, but when you're talking about a company, what are you exactly talking about? What is the perimeter? Where does it finish, it start? What is included and excluded? The group of the supplier deeply related with the company is included or not? Maybe not, but maybe if you are taking away some of them, all the system is not working properly. And what about the relation with some university, R&D, some connection with the market, with some customer? The customer is not included in the company. And what about the relation about the company and the customer? In the traditional approach of economics management, I didn't find any acceptable frame to explain what's the company. If I look to complexity approach, and I take the logic of network, I think you can explain much more effectively a company as a system of interrelated network, where there are part of these that are overlapping, and you have a full degree of belonging to the company, and others that are much more smooth, but they are there. So if you utilize, you can imagine different colors for different networks, and some overlapping. Probably there are different degrees, and some color of full overlapping are belonging. Could be economic belonging because you are taking your economic resources, or salary from the company, but also the suppliers that are surviving with the company, they take their economic resources from there. This is an example of a concept that is natural in the logic of complexity, but is completely far away from all the traditional approach to economics. And then I bring my personal point of view of what could be a direction, a possible way of looking at the possibility of complexity related to economics and management, I would say. I think there are a lot of things, a lot of concepts of complexity we can leverage, and there are a lot of things that complexity could learn or study within economics, finding different pattern, maybe different from some other discipline. For sure there are some large contributions to understand better what means an adaptive system, a complex adaptive system, looking at evolution, looking at biology, and trying to recognize what is typical of economic and social systems. But I come to a possible way, just a stone in the water, let me say, of what is a suggestion for a further field of exploration for complexity and management. The use of different categories brings to create not only a different understanding of existing organization, existing marketplace, it brings to create a different space of possibilities that you can imagine for your action. I want to be more clear. I think that in a market like information technology, media and telecommunication, where there is a continuous change, probably some new companies, some new business, some new services have not been realized because they are not being taught, because they are not being the bootstrap idea of starting with them. But if you start from different logical categories like complexity, sometimes it happened to me, you can see a different way to think at the existing and a sort of a different way to imagine what is the future. I propose some time only with some friends, so it's not a formal theory, but that probably from the logic of the machine, the old management that is driving the machine, from the logic of control and strategy, probably we have to switch to something where when you talk about management, managing not only the top, is all people involved in active role and taking decision related with the system. Management means create a possibility for the future. To make something happen or to make something possible is a completely different approach from strategic planning, that is making projection of the existing, is building up forecast. And I think that many times it's much easier to try to change or to address or to move in a direction instead of trying to forecast an existing world that would be projected as similar to existing, and in my experience has never been the same, not within a long time, within some years. I would close this, let me say, short presentation of a different perspective to management. I'm available for any question, and I don't know if I've been clear, but at least I'm trying to give you the feeling of what these different tools, genetic algorithm, complex network, whatever, have been suggesting to me. They are very interesting in terms of tools, but basically they have been bootstrapping, let me say, a different way of looking at things and to create some different concept in a world that is not only full of new things to be investigated, but is also asking new things and new pattern to be proposed.
Okay, many thanks, Enzo, for all the stimuli. Questions?
Simone? Okay.
No question? I have a comment. I think that you gave us a lot of stimuli. You know, my job is making models, so it's putting it in a sense in a formal context and try to see if something interesting gets out of it. The fact that you mentioned in the end the use of different categories and this kind of bootstrapping dynamics which we have been discussing is now the topic of a model which we are developing. We are not yet, we have not yet anything published on that. It's something which is growing now. There is just one master thesis which is, say, a first step in this direction. But I hope that we can get in our, say, toy world at least some of the kind of dynamics which you point out as important.
Oh, but I'm sure, and I want just to clarify that in my experience with you and other people, when I'm talking about modeling, they are not only useful but necessary to put the problems in the right terms, because in many other cases it's also difficult to understand what are you meaning for the same words. So.
Okay, so thank you again.
Thank you.
So the last speaker of this meeting